I was very, very fortunate. Some of you maybe haven't been quite as fortunate as I was. Because I got really sick when I was 23. Wasn't I lucky? I was. Because it woke me up at that age. Had all the stuff that happened to me at 23 happened to me at 53 or 63, I probably would have said, well, I'm getting old, this is what happens. Instead I said, screw this is not okay. I want my life back, I want my body back, I want my energy back, I want my mental clarity back. I want to be able to feel and function like I felt last year. What the hell? And so I wasn't willing to accept all the BS, right? The doctors, first of all, 3 of them, one after the other, telling me that most of the conditions I had didn't exist. It was in my head. I had irritable bowel syndrome. They said, just watch what you eat. That actually worked really well, that strategy, as long as I didn't eat any food. If I ate anything, I felt terrible. Okay? I had chronic fatigue syndrome. That wasn't, 30 years ago, didn't exist. It wasn't real. Wasn't acknowledged by medicine. Candida, familiar with candida? Candidiasis? Wasn't acknowledged by medicine. None of these conditions was acknowledged by medicine. I had 57 allergies. Those were easy to identify. Just bend over and get dozens of shots in your rear end. And I thought, I like to sit down sometimes though. I don't know if I really want to do that every week, every 2 weeks. It took me 3 years to figure out that medicine is complete and utter nonsense. It's about suppressing symptoms, and it makes you more toxic. Now, trauma medicine saved my life on more than one occasion. I will never use medicine again for anything except trauma. I'll keep going to the emergency room if I've cut an artery open. I think that might be a good idea, okay? But if I've got anything else happening, all doctors are going to do is make me more toxic. They might make me feel better by suppressing symptoms. And there may be times where you've got something you actually need to suppress because it's unbearable or is creating some danger for you temporarily. But you have to understand, it's not creating health. Not ever, okay? And at some point, if you like, maybe tomorrow, since you're here this week, we can talk about cancer. Because cancer treatments don't cure cancer. Not ever. I mean not ever. That's the issue. The problem is, the real issue that we have as a culture, as a race, is that most people have no understanding of what causes disease and what causes health. Most people think that disease is an absence of symptoms. If you're symptom-free, you're healthy. That's what people think. Mm-hmm. But have you heard the stories or seen the stories of the college and football athletes in their prime, right? They look amazing, right? They've got amazing physiques. These are athletes. They must be healthy. And then they drop dead while they're playing their sport. Were they healthy? No, healthy people don't have heart attacks. Does everyone understand that? People don't get heart attacks because they were unlucky. Oh, damn, he got up on the wrong side of the bed that morning and had a heart attack. No. Heart attacks are something you create over time by making poor choices.
You said something about your father.
Well, there's a story I could tell you which relates to what we were talking about yesterday. You want to hear that? Okay. So I think I mentioned to you that he'd had some heart attacks. I remember the first one. I can be a bit absent-minded, and I was on the board of the Vegetarian Society of Washington, D.C. at the time. This would have been close to 30 years ago. And they still in Washington, they have the largest vegan Thanksgiving dinner in North America every year. 400 or 500 people to come together. And I was there every year for the event. There was almost nothing there for me to eat because the other board members didn't like my raw vegan thing. But I would go because it was our event. And I went from there to my father and stepmother's house because they had a not huge. You know, they had a catered Thanksgiving dinner for 30 or 40 people, and maybe 50. And I pulled up in front of their house, and there were no cars. I mean, there was the normal number of cars. Everyone had their 5 cars in the driveway, but I was expecting to see the street lined with cars, and that wasn't the case. In fact, there were 3 or 4 cars that normally lived at the house, and there was only 1 in the driveway. And I, if it hadn't been Thanksgiving, I might have thought I probably got the wrong day, because I'll do that sometimes. But it was Thanksgiving. I knew it was the right day. So I walked up to the house, and on the front door was a little piece of paper that said, "Sorry, Thanksgiving's been canceled. Alan had a heart attack." And so I drove. It turns out he'd been out that morning raking some leaves in the front yard to clean up before everyone showed up. Had his first heart attack. He was younger than me at the time, by the way. And I drove to the closest hospital. Sure enough, found him there. And my father quit smoking when he was 40. And he took up eating instead, which is a common thing. And so he gained a ton of weight. In fact, we are so similar in appearance. I'll interrupt the story to tell you another quick story. I used to buy and renovate houses. And I got a call one day from a realtor who said, "Loren, I've got a house I think you'll be interested in." She told me about it, and I said, "Yeah, it sounds interesting." I said, "Where is it?" She told me, she said, "It's on Adelaide Drive." I said, "Oh, that's interesting. That's the street that my family lived in when I was born. We moved off of that street when I was 2, and I've never been back. I mean, I've been on the street, but I didn't even know which house it was we lived in. I'd never been to the house." I was around 30 at the time, so this was 28 years ago. And I met her at the house. I looked at it, I liked it, wrote a contract, bought it. Called my mother a few minutes later and said, "Mom, what was our address on Adelaide Drive?" She said 9227. I said, "Guess what? I just bought our old house." It's the same house, okay? Still had the same deck my father built with his own hands on the back of the house. So whenever I was doing one of these projects, the first thing I would do is I'd introduce myself to all the neighbors, give them my card, and say, if there's any, contractors can be noisy and not very respectful. I didn't want them to call the county and complain. I said, "Please call me if there's an issue. I live 10 minutes away. I'll be right here. We'll get it resolved," like that. So I went to all the neighbors. Most of them took my card and said, "Okay, thanks." That was it. The lady who lived to the left next door said, "I remember you." I said, "What do you mean?" She said, I've been here for 40 years. I was here when your family lived here. So we moved out when I was 2 years old, right? So I remember you." The lady across the street said the same thing. I think one was a widow and one was divorced. They were both living there by themselves now. And so one day, the lady who lived across the street was very friendly. The one who lived next door, I would see every once in a while. But the one who lived across the street, whenever I pulled up, she'd come out, we'd talk, whatever. So one day I pull up, she walks out and says, "Loren, come here." And her house is up on a hill overlooking the one I just bought. And I walked up the steps. She said, "I gotta tell you what happened yesterday. I came home from work yesterday. And my daughter, her daughter was probably 10 years older than me. So I was 30, her daughter was 40, she was probably 60, something like that. And she said, my daughter has a key to the house, and when I got home, she had stopped by, and when I got home, she said, "Mom, you'll never believe what happened today." Her mom said, "What happened?" She said, "I was standing here in the kitchen looking out the window. Alan Lockman walked out of that house, and he hadn't changed a day in 30 years. Because I looked almost exactly like my dad looked. He was 30 when we moved out of the house. Right? So, flash forward, and my dad is now 100 pounds heavier than me. We don't look so much alike anymore. Okay? He's morbidly obese, And I'm trying for years to tell him, to help him, to make changes, to convince him. Not interested. As I said, yes. He's like, oh, my blood pressure is perfectly fine. Not telling me he's taken 3 or 4 medications every day. So I walk into the hospital room, and he says, son, he's laying in bed. He says, son, maybe you were right. Maybe if I'd taken better care of myself, this wouldn't have happened. And with a grin on his face, he says, but it's too late now. I'm like, Dad, it's not too late. They scheduled him for a balloon angioplasty. Anyone know what a balloon angioplasty is? The older people do. This is where they open up a balloon in your arteries and ream out the fat. They literally take out these long strands of fat, right? So they scheduled him for this procedure 5 days later, 5 days down the road. I said, Dad, let's check you out. Come home with me for 5 days. I'll fast you. He said, you try to kill me? And I said, no, but it's a tempting idea. I said, but if I wanted to kill you, I'd pick up a pillow and put it on your face. I wouldn't live with you for 5 days. Okay? He was completely committed to medicine. He was a successful guy. He had a guy that was considered one of the top heart people in Washington. You see, he trusted him completely. I couldn't convince him. So the next day I go back to visit him. When I walk in the room, he's talking to his heart surgeon. And they're about to give him a stress test. This is where they put you on a treadmill and see how you do, right? See how your body responds. My father says, I'm probably not going to do very well. And the doctor says, why do you say that? My dad says, well, the last time I took this test was in your office a few years ago, and I collapsed on the treadmill. You guys had to physically remove me from the treadmill. And the doctor says, oh yeah. He says, but you were all right then. Your arteries were only 60% occluded, 60% blocked with plaque. And he walks out of the room. I'm standing there with my mouth open. I said, Dad, if you built a building and all the pipes were 60% blocked, would that be okay? Like, what the fuck? Okay, now, why do you think the doctor said, but you were okay then?
Because it's even worse now?
No,
Well, they just cleared all of his veins out.
they hadn't done anything yet.
Oh,
No, he said, when my dad said, last time I took this, I said, okay then. Last time I took this, I collapsed. And the doctor said, yes, but you were okay then. Your arteries were only 60% occluded. Why did he say you were okay?
Because it's normal?
Because it's normal. He was, without 50 years old. That's how it is. That's what happens when you're 50 years old. Your arteries are 60% occluded. That's perfectly fine. Nothing wrong with that. Okay? This is how they think. Everything's based on what they see. Okay? Again, you do not want to be normal. Normal means half dead and mostly stupid. Okay? Because your body's toxic and dehydrated, and your brain doesn't work, and your body's not working. You're falling apart. This is nothing to shoot for. I mean,
did he have the operation?
He did.
Did you manage to fast him? Is he okay
he did.
now?
He didn't fast. He's not okay. He did have the surgery. He went on to have 4 more heart attacks and died of a stroke 7.5 years ago. He was still morbidly obese. He was on drugs the entire time. He had perfect blood pressure the entire time. And he still had 5 heart attacks and a stroke. Again, don't be fooled into thinking these drugs are doing anything for you except making your body more poisonous, more toxic. Because every single drug is toxic. There are no exceptions.
Shadows are moving.